Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The whole cardiac cycle can be represented by means of a graphical cycle which shows the amplitude of the waves. That is the height of the waves depending upon the pressures in the chambers, that is the atria and the ventricles. It also represents when the atrioventricular valves opens and when it closes in aortic and pulmonary arch in each segment of the cardiac cycle. First of all, I am going to explain you what this graph represents before we talk about the cardiac cycle. Now you can see that there are two axes in this graphical representation of the cardiac cycle. The y-axis, which represents the pressure of the blood in millimeter of mercury, and the time on x-axis, that is the time in milliseconds. This graph also represents that when the atria contract, that is comes in the systole phase, and when it relaxes, that is in diastole phase, and when the ventricles contract and relax, that is comes in the systole and the diastole phases. Then we need to see that which line represents what. Like black lines here represents the aorta, the pressure of in the aorta, and the opening and closing of the aortic valve. The blue line represents the left atrium. The amplitude of the wave or the height of the wave in the left atrium is small because of the pressure in the left atrium. As the pressure is less, the amplitude of the wave is small. The red line represents the pressure in the ventricles. As the ventricular contraction is strong, which causes the high amplitude waves seen in the cardiac cycle. Then it also represents when the atrioventricular valves opens and when it closes in each segment of the cardiac cycle, and also the aortic valve when it opens and when it closes. So we start with the events in the cardiac cycle. First of all, when the left atrium fills with blood, it pours its contents into the left ventricle. Once it is entering into the left ventricle, the atrioventricular valve, which is present in the left side of the heart, that is the bicuspid or the mitral valve, it opens. It allows the blood to enter into the left ventricles. So once it is entering into the left ventricle, its pressure increases in the left ventricle, and once it is being filled, then it causes the ventricles are going to contract and pour its content into the aorta. Like here you can see that when it is contracting, it pours its content into the aorta. Now once it is pouring its blood into the aorta, the pressure in the ventricle decreases, and you can see that the line goes down. Here this notch represents that the pressure in the aorta increases for a while and then it decreases. Okay. Now here you can see that it is also showing that at which segment of the cardiac cycle the atrioventricular valve opens. So it opens when the left atrium is pouring its contents into the left ventricle. And then when the ventricles are contracting, at that time the atrioventricular valve closes, so it will prevent the backflow of the blood into the atria. Now it is also showing the aortic valve, that in which segment it is closed. So here you can see that if the AV valve closes in this segment, the aortic valve opens. It closes. And here, once it is entering into the ventricle, the blood, and pouring its contents into the aorta, this aortic valve opens. At the same time, the AV valve closes. So you can see that at what segment, in which segment of the cardiac cycle, the AV valve opens and the aortic valve closes. And here you can see that in this phase, the AV valve opens, it is closing, and here it is opening in this segment of the cardiac cycle when there is a contraction of the ventricles. Now beside it, we can see that about the heart sound. It is also showing, this cardiac cycle is also showing the heart sounds. Now as the ventricle contracts, the AV valves were slammed shut, causing the loop sound. This is the first heart sound because of the closure of the AV valves. The second heart sound is occur when the semilunar valves, that is the aortic valve, close so that the blood cannot be drawn back into the ventricles, causing the second heart sound, which is called as do. So it means that in one cardiac cycle, it consists of one systole and one diastole, that is the contraction and relaxation of the heart together makes one cardiac cycle. Okay, now this is here we are talking about the summary of the cardiac cycle. The sequence of one heartbeat ending to the beginning of another is known as cardiac cycle. The heart consists of two pumps that work together where both sides of the heart relax and contract with one another. Systole is a repetition in the contraction of the heart chambers. Diastole is the relaxation of the heart chambers, and during which it is being filled with blood. Blood moves through the circulatory system from regions of high pressure to low pressure. There are three stages to the cardiac cycle: the atrial systole, the ventricular systole, and the diastole. Atrial systole is where the atria within the heart contract and pour its content, that is the blood, into the ventricles. Ventricular systole is where the ventricle chambers contract and forces the blood up and out of the heart and into the arteries. Diastole is where all four chambers in the heart relax and refill with the blood. Atrioventricular valve opens during atrial systole so that it pours its content into the ventricles, and at the same time the semilunar valve closes. During ventricular systole, AV valve closes and semilunar valve opens, and during ventricular diastole, AV valve opens and semilunar valve closes. Now when this AV valve closes, it causes the first heart sound, and when the semilunar valve closes, it causes the second heart sound. So the first heart sound as loop, and the second heart sound as do. This is all about the summary of the cardiac cycle. Thank you.